Hello there, everyone. Hope you all doing fantastically. My name is Tyler. I will be your chef today as we cook through this beautiful rendition of French onion soup. So, if you're cooking this and it is a special occasion ahead of you, you've come to the right place because French onion soup is literally the perfect dish to serve on any occasion, right? But, honestly, this is one of my favorite recipes of all time. We're going to show you a lot of techniques over here, how to caramelize onions beautifully, right? There's a couple different ways to caramelize onions. And the way we do it for French onion soup is a particular way. And so, taking a classic dish, a French bistro classic, and really elevating it, right? And so, a lot of times when we talk about cooking at Truffle Shuffle, we talk about good cooking as a lot of little things done well, right? And, honestly, I think French onion soup is a perfect example of that, right? When you boil it down, no pun intended, French onion soup is literally onions, right? Broth, cheese, little leftover bread, right? But, that's kind of the beauty of cooking is, like, really the best chefs are able to make something delicious out of, everyone else would look at something and they would see trim. The best chefs see delicious opportunity, right? And so, I've been lucky enough, all the chefs I've ever worked for have really instilled that into me. And, whoever came up with French onion soup recipe, I know it's kind of contested, but whoever came up with it, obviously instilled in them too. Because it's taking, those simple things and truly elevating them and making them exceptional. So, couple of very simple items over here for this recipe, right? Our mise en place, our ingredients, right? So we have a large pot we're going to need for this recipe. Wooden spoon or spatula. Okay, we will need a cheese grater for this recipe. Okay, for grating cheese, believe it or not. We have a beautiful large cutting board as well as a knife. Okay, and if you have a bread knife, you can bust that out too. Okay, these work really well. And so the other items we're going to need over here, a little sheet tray for toasting our crouton. We also need a little mixing bowl over here as well. Okay? And then if you have some ramekins, right, for serving the soup in, those work super well because the key to getting this soup perfect is serving it super bubbly, boiling hot, right? Boiling hot, super hot, caramelized on top, nice and brown, is really how you want to serve this soup, okay? So, with that being said, simple mise en place. Our ingredients, very simple as well. We got onions, okay? We got a whole lot of onions. One of the things I will say about French onion soup is sometimes some restaurants, they actually skimp on the onions, believe it or not, right? You might think, how could you do that, right? And I would say the same exact thing, right? How can you do that? I don't have the sad trombone on this one, but yeah. Cannot skimp on the onions, right? You gotta cut lots of onions. That's just part of it, And so, we got some beautiful beef broth over here, right? A little bone broth, beef stock. We will need butter. Okay, we're gonna be cooking these onions in a beurre fondue today, which really helps them stay nice and soft. Okay, without getting those hard caramelized edges. We got a couple different cheeses over here, right? We're using a little Alpine style cheese, or semi-hard cheese. We're using Toma today, American style cheese. We also got a little Comté, which is delicious. Okay. After that, we got some thyme, a little bit of flour. I like using a little flour as a liaison in my my French onion soup. Okay. We also have a bay leaf. Okay, got a little baguette over here too, and we got a packet of our world's finest Balinese truffle salt in case you were looking for that. A couple other additional items. You have a little Madeira or cognac, right? Perfect for this recipe. We got a little bit of sherry vinegar and sugar as well to really season, right? Because when it comes to soups and sauces, right? That's really where our seasoning has to be at the highest level because there's nowhere to hide, right? Like when you're making a salad and you got a million components, you can kind of hide a little bit. But with sauces and soups, If it's seasoned beautifully, it's amazing. If it's not, it's really not impressive, right? So, it's all our mise en place and ingredients, okay? So, if you have a little wine on hand, make sure you get some of that going, right? But I'm going to get right to cooking because this soup does take a little bit of time to simmer, okay? So, the first thing I want you to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, 350. And what we're going to start with is we're actually going to peel and julienne our onions. Okay, so, this is going to be a little bit of a project, but that's good. I personally feel that anyone who wants to consider themselves, not even a chef, but a good home cook, needs to cut at least a 50-pound sack. Needs to julienne at least a 50-pound sack of onions, right? So, come over here. Just trim the top, right? Just trim the bottom as well, okay? And then we want to split this onion in half across the root, all right? And what I like to do is I like to grab a little bowl, all right, to place all my onion peels in. And you want to make sure, save those onion peels, right? They make a delicious and beautiful vegetable stock, right? That you can use, for like very simple little soup bases and whatnot. It's not that super, super refined, fine dining style vegetable stock, right? But it's a really good way to make sure we're not wasting, okay? Because wasting is very, very important in cooking, right? We never waste. So, again, we got to come through here and we got to, cut all of these onions exactly the same way. All right, so what I like to do is I like to go through, get them all trimmed on the top, trimmed on the bottom, split across the root, right? Beautiful. And again, the julienning of the onions is really just a very important part of this soup, right? So, at this point, I got all of them. Tops have been trimmed as well as the bottoms, right? Oh, split that down. Okay, boom. And so, whenever we're working, we always want to work very diligently, neat, organized, right? Effective. So, that's why I like to peel my onions into a bowl, right? And whether or not you're saving the onion peels for broth or not, right? It does just make your cleanup process much, much easier and faster, okay? Because, whenever we're working in the kitchen, we always want to pretend that we're working on a production line, right? That was always a game. It was a game I always played with myself whenever I was cooking, is how fast can I possibly do this and how organized can I be doing it, right? Because whenever you're cooking in a kitchen, you're cooking at super, super high speed. So, anyways, we are onions peeled, right? Beautiful. So, now that we have them peeled, we're going to come through and we're going to start cutting them into our julienne, okay? And so, every chef has their own way that they like julienne, okay? Mine is, I like to go over the top. And so, we're looking for nice thin julienne. They don't have to be like crazy paper thin, right? But we're looking for 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch thick, okay? So, the way we want to do this is whenever you're cutting julienne, right? You just want to curl your fingers in. Very important. All right? Make sure we have a really nice sharp knife too. That's also really important. Okay? And I always like to put my index finger on the spine of my knife. Okay? Which is the non-sharp side of the blade. Right? And basically we're just coming down, slicing down, and pulling back at the same time. Right? So, you can do it moving forwards or backwards, right? Either or, right? But the idea here is you just want to cut them into nice little thin strips. And you see right there, I cut through a good part of my onion, I tipped it, and now I'm going to keep cutting it, right? And so, you know, honestly, I can say julienning onions really is almost like a, at this stage of my life, meditative process, right? I've always really, really enjoyed it. So, again, once you get good at it, it'll happen very quickly. But if you don't have a sharp knife, you will not be able to cut them very easily, all right? If you have any onion-related tears, right, not a problem, right? Even the best of us get onion-related tears. The best way to deal with any onion tears is just to make sure that you have some really nice ventilation going on, right? That's really the best way. So, again, what we're doing over here is just cutting all these onions into our nice julienne, right? Beautiful. And even if they're not perfect semicircles, right? Even if they're not perfect semicircles, they'll still be delicious, okay? But when they are those semicircles, they have that really nice, they look really beautiful on the spoon, right? When they all kind of drape over the edge, right? So, beautiful. And again, you're going to get a mountain of onions. And you might be thinking, Tyler, this is way too many onions. To which, you know, the answer is, this is French onion soup, chef, you know. So, anyways, the other thing that you can do to account for any onion-related tears is also just consume a little more wine. It's always helpful. Statistically proven. Alright. So, coming to the end of my onions over here. Right, and even if it takes you a second to cut all these, no worries, right? Alright, so we have our beautiful sliced onions, mountain of onions. Alright. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pop them all into a little mixing bowl. Okay. So, again, this might be the largest amount of onions you've ever julienned at one time. Okay? Which, if that's the case, after you cut your first mountain, right, you want to give yourself a little round of applause over here. Right? Boom. So, we have our beautiful mountain of julienne onions. Make sure you clean up your station, right? After you get them chopped up. That's an essential part whenever we're working. We always got to work nice and clean and neat and organized. So, once you got your onions done, it's now time to start cooking them, right? Sweating them, stewing them. So, the technique we're going to use is called, we're going to be basically making beurre fondue, right? Which means that we're going to be cooking the onions in an emulsion of butter and water. And we don't want to get that really hard caramelization, right? Because it's going to give us that almost like hard texture at the end, right? We want super soft, melted onions, but really deeply caramelized. So what I want you to do is go ahead on your stove, right? We're going to go ahead and place all of our butter in the pot, okay, which is about 2 ounces of butter. All right, so go ahead, pop it in there. And we're also going to place in here our onions and 1 cup of water. All right, let's come over here. We've got our onions in here. Go all in. I know it might seem strange that I haven't preheated this pan, but just bear with me, okay? So, again, we got onions in there, our butter. We're going 1 cup of water. All right. Want to give a nice pinch of sugar, right? And want to give a nice pinch of salt. And you can use that Balinese truffle salt in there. You don't have to go too crazy with the salt. All right. You don't have to go too crazy with it because we're going to season in layers, right? We're going to get our first layer going, then our second, then our third. Okay, so that is step 3 in our how to cook section, right? We're getting all these items in here, and so I want to go ahead and stir everything together, and I want to heat this up, all right, over high heat, okay? Nice high heat over here. So just give it a nice stir. Again, it's going to look like a crazy amount of onions when you start, okay? And if it looks like that, then you're doing a good job, okay? Doing a good job over there. But, again, we're going to bring this up to a boil over nice high heat, okay? And what's going to happen is it's going to come up. The steam is going to start cooking the onions on the top, and then they're going to be simmered, you know, at the bottom. And basically, we're going to stew down our onions, and you'll be pretty surprised how far they cook down. They'll cook down to about 25% of their original volume, right? And again, we're going to cook them in this beurre fondue. It's going to allow them to caramelize. It's going to keep them nice and soft. And then when we go to add our other additional flavoring elements, it's going to, you know, really give us those beautiful, super caramelized onions as our base for our soup. Okay, so as that's cooking, we got to make sure to stir it from time to time because again, we don't want to get these like really crispy caramelized onions. We want to keep them soft, right? So we want to keep them moving so they never sit on one side of the pan for too long. Okay, so if you're ready to go into the next steps in this mise en place, all right, we will start going there. So again, we're gonna let our onions keep cooking. We're gonna start getting to our other sections of our mise. Okay, which the first things first is we're getting to our cheese. Okay, so I'm gonna come over here, grab my cheese. All right, and again, we got a little Alpine style cheese and a little bit of Comte over here too. All right, and so we're going to be grating up all of both of these cheeses. All right, and again, we're just giving a little stir from time to time on these onions. Okay. And so this onion cooking process is going to take about 15 to 20 minutes or so, right? It's a long process, okay? But it's totally worth it. So, back to our cheeses. If you have any rind on there, just trim that little bit of that rind off, okay? Again, you got a teeny little bit of that rind. You can totally trim it off. Not a problem. All right. And we're going to be grating both cheeses together. So if you want to, you know, you can just mix them together, right? So grab my cheese grater. I'm going to use the large hole side of this cheese grater. Okay. I'm going to grate up my little Alpine style cheese over here. Okay. So, again, we're using the large hole side. Some chefs use mozzarella in their French onion soup. I personally am not the biggest fan of that. I know some chefs really like showing off that super dramatic stringiness, right? Personally, I don't think that's what French onion soup is about. I think French onion soup is about that really beautiful balance of the onions, the broth too. Notice we're using beef broth if you're doing the truffle shuffle recipe. If you want to make this vegetarian, you can use vegetable stock. You can use chicken stock too. I really like beef stock because it has that really robust flavor, right, that you don't necessarily get with a chicken stock, right? It'll still taste delicious. It just won't have quite the same character to it. Okay. So again, grating these cheeses up. All right. And there is nothing like a whole bunch of cheese on top of our French onion soup. Okay. So, beautiful. So I'm down to the last of it. Grated up those cheeses. And again, we want to make sure they're nicely mixed together. Okay? And then if you have a little bowl or a little plate, right, we're just going to transfer this cheese into a little bowl or plate. Okay? Again, you know, when we all talk about cooking, we do our mise en place, we prep, we stage, and then we start cooking. Okay? It actually makes it much, much faster in the long term. All right? So, beautiful. So again, come over here. Let's get it nice and cleaned up. And back to our onions. Again, you're going to notice there's going to be a lot of liquid coming off of the onions, and that's exactly what we're looking for, right? We want the onions to be, again, cooking down in almost in their own broth. Right? And so we've got a little bit of water to start, and then the onions, as they cook, they're going to let off a whole lot of liquid themselves as well. Alright? Beautiful. So, we're already starting to see our onions kind of cook down a little bit. Right? But again, as we're doing this, you're going to notice how the onions are really going to, they're going to start to soften up and really cook down a bunch. Okay, so again, that brings us to our next step, all right, which is to continue caramelizing these onions. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set a 15 to 20 minute timer. And what I want you all to do is just keep cooking those onions on that nice high heat, right? Once they start to get really nice and caramelized, we can start turning the heat down a little bit and going kind of more medium. Right? Everyone's stove's a little bit different, so, you know, high on your stove might be way hotter than mine is. But, you know, once we start seeing that browning, we can turn it down. Because, again, we want that really soft, but very, very evenly brown caramelized onions. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to set a we're going to start with a 15-minute timer over here. Okay? And so we will see you in just a couple minutes. All right, as we continue counting down with our timer. All right, so we're gonna go to our little waiting screen over here. All right, we'll see you guys about 15 minutes from now. Okay, see you soon. All right, so we're back here now. It's been about 15-20 minutes. You see my onions are really starting to change. Okay, you probably noticed yours are too. And so this is the stage where, you know, we really got to look at it. Everyone's onion is going to be a little bit different, but we're going to be looking for the same principles. Okay, so you're going to notice my onions have cooked down. They're not super, super dark, okay? But they've cooked down to where they're all starting to get a little bit of caramelization, okay? You might also notice the bottom of your pot getting a little bit of fond, okay? If that's the case, we're going to need to deglaze the pan with a little bit more water just to get that fond off the bottom, just so it doesn't emulsify in the soup too much. But what we want to do now is we want to continue cooking this over medium heat, right? I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add a little bit more water. right, to mine. And again, it might seem counterintuitive. You might think, hey, why are you putting water in here, right? But the idea is that we want to keep the onions soft, right? We want to keep them from sticking to the bottom of the pan, okay? So I'm going to keep cooking mine. We got a little bit more ways to go. Once you get to this point where they're all softened, but they're not fully browned, turn the heat down to medium high, right? And now we're going to need to keep stirring them until they get that really beautiful brown color, okay? And again, we want to keep them nice and soft. We don't want them to get too crispy. And again, adding that little bit of water, creating that moist environment as opposed to a super dry environment allows us to get them soft, right? There's two ways to caramelize onions. There's the hard and fast and low and slow. Okay, this is the low and slow way. And I know we did it over high heat, right? You could cook these for like 4 or 5 hours on the stove if you wanted to, and they'll taste delicious, right? And you totally can do that and should do that, right? You know, in these classes, we like showing the way that we do it in the restaurant, and I always start my onions like that just to get them wilted down, right? Once they're wilted down, then we go turn it down a little bit. So again, we're gonna cook them. We're gonna keep stirring them. We want them to be that nice, beautiful amber color, right, all throughout our onions. Okay. So again, make sure we're continuing to stir. And we're gonna cook these for another 5 or 6 minutes or so. Okay. And remember, it's French onion soup, right? It's all about the onions. So really getting our onions right is going to be a really important part of making this soup delicious. Okay, so I'm going to keep cooking mine for another 5 or 6 minutes or so, right? And then I'll see you here in just a few to continue with the next steps. All right. All right. So we're back now, and now my onions are starting to look where I want them to. Okay, so if you can see my screen over here, looking really deep, really nice and brown and beautiful, right? See that? They're caramelized all over, but very importantly, they're not like really, really hard caramelized, okay? So again, like I was saying, if you want to, you can totally cook these for 3 or 4 hours at the lowest flame possible, and they will taste delicious, right? I'm not gonna lie, but we're gonna cook them till this point, okay? And they're gonna be absolutely stunning, right? Because we're gonna add a couple other elements to this, right? And so, again, a lot of little things going on: butter, beurre fondue to cook our caramelized onions, right? Now we're gonna actually sauté with a little bit of flour, just a little bit, right? I feel that it helps bring this soup together a touch, just so the flour helps out, kind of thicken it just gently, right? And then we're going to deglaze with our little bit of Madeira, cook it down, and all those flavors are really going to build on top of each other. So at this point, I want you to turn the heat down to about medium-low, and we're going to start with our flour, okay? So I'm going to heat medium-low, and so we only need about a teaspoon of flour, okay? If you're working out of the ingredient kit, we did send you more flour than you need, okay? So you'll have a little bit of extra flour to use in a future recipe, okay? So what we want to do is we want to sauté, right, the vegetables, okay, with the flour. So literally just sprinkle, right, sauté the vegetables with a little bit of flour, stir that in, okay? And what that does is it allows every little piece of flour to get coated, right, with the fat that's the butter, right? That's actually all over these onions. All right, so you'll see I have very little liquid at the bottom of my pan, right? I've added that flour on top of my onions, okay? Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to add a little bit of cognac or Madeira, okay? And so we're looking for about 1 shot's worth, right? You can go 2 shots worth if you want to, but you know, this really adds a nice flavor complexity to the French onion soup, right? This is optional. If you don't have it or you don't want to put it in there, it'll still taste delicious without it, right? But adding that little bit in really is going to help, okay? So once I get that little bit of Madeira or cognac in here, I want to cook this down to what we call in French au sec, okay, which literally translates to almost dry, right? So we're going to cook this down until our pan is almost dry so we can see the bottom. What that means is that we're cooking off the excess liquid, right, and excess water content. What we're left with is a concentration of flavor, right? And so, again, anytime we're making soups and sauces, we're always, always, always concentrating flavor. That's the name of the game, right? That's the difference between a super sauce that tastes good and a super sauce that tastes excellent, right? Cooking off the excess water content to concentrate the flavor. So, again, over here, got my little bit of Madeira in there. I'm on about medium to medium low heat, right? And this is just going to take, I don't know, 2 minutes or so to cook it off, right? Happens pretty quickly, but you'll see we have these really super flavorful onions, okay? It's always helpful, too, if you want, come in here, get a little taste test, right? Always want to taste throughout your cooking. And we're not tasting for it to be a perfect finished product. We're tasting for flavor development, right? I can tell mine to have that little bit of sweetness, right? I can taste that little bit of alcohol in there, right? Can also taste the caramelization. They're not they probably need a little more salt. What I want you to do is don't add salt quite yet, right? We're going to season in layers, right? So once we get our broth in there, we're going to add another pinch, but this soup is going to have to reduce down, okay? And so we don't want to really finish seasoning until the very end. Okay, so at this point, my Madeira has cooked down. It's at that beautiful au sec stage. All right? And so what I want to do now is I want to come over here and I want to start to add my liquids to the pot. Okay? So I'm going to start with this beautiful bone broth that we have over here. Okay, again, we're using beef stock here at Truffle Shuffle. Okay? Because we use the real deal. So go ahead. Get that beef stock in there. Alright? And we want to use a flavorful beef stock, but personally I don't like French onion soup when the stock is really, really reduced, right? If it's too powerful, right, we don't want to be drinking sauce over here. Okay? So, again, get your beef stock in there. And then what I want to do is I want to actually add 1 cup of water. Okay? This just gives us a little bit of room for the soup to cook, for the flavors to develop, right? We're going to turn the heat up to high just to bring this up to a boil. Okay, stir it up. What I want you to notice is the quantity of onions in every single spoonful of soup, all right? That's super important. We got to make sure that every spoonful of soup has lots of onions in there. Okay, that's a really that's the luxury of this dish, is having tons of onions, because it means put a lot of work in there, right? So as this is cooking, also going to add a couple other elements. I'm going to add my thyme, okay, which we're going to grab this thyme over here, and you can just toss it in if you'd like whole. You can tie it up with a little you can tie it up with a little piece of string, or you can do the move too, where if you have a piece of thyme that's kind of flexible enough, right, you can just very gently kind of secure it together. That way it all goes in one little piece, right? So I got my thyme in there. I kind of like how when it cooks, it's going to break down and a couple of the leaves are going to get in here and be a little rustic. I also have my bay leaf. Okay. If you want to add a little black pepper, you can. All right, and I'm going to add another small pinch of salt. Okay. To get in there. So, what we want to do now is we want to bring this soup up to a boil, okay? And then we're going to turn it down to a simmer to simmer it for an hour, right? Again, you can simmer this soup for 5 hours if you want to. It'll still taste delicious, right? And the flavor will develop more into that stewed, almost like stewed meat flavor, right? I'm only going to simmer this for an hour. I believe that gives us the proper amount of time for flavor development, right? If you eat this soup tomorrow, it'll obviously taste better tomorrow, right? Anytime it sits. But it'll still taste really, really delicious today, okay? And so, again, think of all the layers of flavor we got in there. We got to simmer this, let that thyme and bay leaf infuse into that soup, right? The thing I want you to do, though, is that once it comes up to a boil, turn it down to a low simmer, right? We want it just to be kind of very gently simmering. We don't want to reduce the soup down too much. We want it to reduce only by about 5% or so. We don't want it to go too crazy, okay? So, at this stage, we got our soup simmering, okay? So, it's time to get our croutons cut, okay? And so your croutons depend highly upon your ramekin, okay? And so, again, I'm suggesting you should use broiler-safe ramekins, right? Because when you broil this soup, it's going to be a totally different experience, and it's going to be really, really delicious. Even just melting the cheese on top is amazing, okay? But what we want to do is grab a little bread. And again, this is like a peasant dish. So, traditionally, this would be made with, stale bread, right? But, because we have modern food these days, we can make our own croutons, okay? So, you grab a little bread knife or something, all right? And we're just going to cut little croutons. I like to cut mine about an inch thick, right? About an inch or so. And you can use any kind of baguette, right? Any kind of baguette. You can use country style bread too, right? Using a little bit of Polish baguette that we got going on. So, we got our crouton. We're just going to lay them out onto our little sheet tray over here. Alright? And the goal with cooking these croutons is not necessarily to get them really, really brown and crispy, right? We want to dry them out. We want to get it to where they don't have much moisture left in them. So what happens instead is they soak up that liquid. And you'll see this a lot when we use bread a lot in savory cuisine. It's that the best French toast is made with dry bread, right? Because it soaks up the custard, right? Which is the French toast filling, or French toast batter. These croutons too, again, we're drying them out just so they can soak up more soup. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these in my oven, okay? And we're going to go in that oven for about 5 to 10 minutes. And we want them to be dried and slightly browned, okay? So, at this point, we got our soup coming up to a boil. It's almost there for me, right? Almost there. And again, once it comes up to a boil, we're just going to keep it at a nice low simmer for about an hour, really to let the flavor develop, okay? So, at this point, you got your timer set for your croutons. Keep a diligent eye on that soup over there, okay? And I'm going to take a little break, give you some time to pour a little wine. When I come back, I'm going to show you what my croutons look like and what my soup is looking like. Okay, so see you in just a couple minutes. All right, now we're back. I got my soup simmering. Okay, you can see it's simmering away over here, looking gorgeous. Again, we're going to give about an hour or so to hang out. We also have our delicious croutons over here. Okay, so croutons, lightly golden brown. They don't have to be super, super golden, right? Just nice and light, just to get some of that moisture out of them so that they have that really nice crispiness to them, okay? And so now we just got to continue simmering this soup for about an hour. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to come back, we're going to plate up this soup, ramekin, crouton, soup in, cheese on top, broiler, right? Make it absolutely delicious. So I'm going to see you here in another hour. I know we've been going on a lot of breaks, but it's going to be absolutely delicious and totally worth it. So make sure you grab a little bit more wine. Make sure you hang out, let that soup simmer. I'll see you here very shortly. All right, now we're at the moment of truth over here. Okay, so this is really where you got to season that soup until it tastes absolutely delicious. Okay, so I've been, kind of hanging out, taking a look at my soup, right? Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
All right, looking incredible. Okay, and you want to give it a little bit of taste, right? And you want to season to taste, right? And what I mean is salt and a little bit of vinegar, right? A little bit of that sherry vinegar. So what you got to do is you got to taste, add a little salt, add a little vinegar, stir it. Make sure, if you're using that truffle salt, make sure you stir it for a good 30 seconds or so because it's a larger crystal salt, right? And so what that means is it takes a second to dissolve, okay? So make sure you get that going, all right? And then taste it again. And sometimes you got to taste it like 10 to 30 times, okay, before it's exactly where you want it, but it's really important, okay? So I've tasted mine. Salt and vinegar is tasting delicious. I'm getting over here. I like a little bit of pepper in my soup. All right, let's get a little black pepper in there, okay? And now is the best part of making French onion soup, which is the plating, okay? So I want you to grab your croutons, your cheese, a little ramekin. Make sure it's oven safe. Make sure it's not going to explode in the broiler. And we have our oven turned to broil now. All right. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and place a couple little crouton in my bowl. All right. I'm going to go ahead, fill it up with my really nice hot soup. All right. It's really important this soup is served boiling hot, right? That's always how they serve it over in France. That's the best way to enjoy this soup. And again, it's just a hearty soup. Onions, right? Make sure you got lots of onions in there. That beef stock. Okay, fill it all the way to the top. All right, fill it all the way to the top over there. And then with the cheese, you've got to be really generous with our cheese. Okay, so make sure we're not getting it all over the edges, but really kind of cover the top of that bowl. That cheese over there. Okay, that way it gets that really melty, cheesy exterior. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop mine in the broiler. It's going to take 30 seconds to a minute, or maybe even 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the strength of your broiler. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. I'm going to place this into our broiler. All right. Beautiful. And sometimes it helps if your ramekin is really far away from the broiler. It helps. Sometimes you can put a little sheet tray underneath it just to lift it up. Helps to get really close to the bottom of that broiler. Okay, that way you get that really nice hot sear from the top that really caramelizes the cheese, makes it unbelievably delicious. Okay, so as we're getting this ready, right, I'm going to get my other plating elements dialed in. Okay, so I got my plate. All right, we're going to need a little black pepper over here, as well as a little bit of our beautiful Balinese truffle salt to finish. Okay. And again, if you want, go ahead and make yourself a little salad, a little side. All right, but we're going to go ahead and pull our beautiful looking French onion soup out of the oven, out of the broiler rather. Wow, look at that. It's absolutely soup. Show you how mine is looking. And again, you want it to be that really nice kind of caramelized cheese on top. All right, check that out over here, okay? Oh, beautiful looking French onion soup. Okay, so when you serve it, be careful because this ramekin is really hot. It just came out of the broiler. Okay, so if you want, you can go ahead and put a little napkin down on your plate. Okay, but either or, you gotta serve it piping hot. All right, and I like to finish a little bit of cracked black pepper. All right, and a little sprinkle, little finishing sprinkle, that beautiful truffle salt over there. Okay, so you get this going. I want you to check out how this finished soup is looking. Okay, so we got our soup cam over here. All right, so look at this. All right, you come in here. We got that layer of cheese on top, trying to get underneath it. Oh my gosh. Should you get a little crouton in there too? Look at that. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow. So good. So, I hope you enjoyed this class. I hope you enjoyed our French onion soup experience. Enjoy cooking this dish. If you have any questions, let us know. But with that, thank you very much for spending time with us. I hope you enjoyed our version of French onion soup. I hope you learned something and hope you're able to, bring more delicious French onion soup to more people in this world. Okay, so with that, I will bid you adieu. Thank you very much and hope to cook with you again soon. Bye.